Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtotarashata Shishimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Chila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Chila Prabhupada Ki Grantarashimam Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Shishiguru and Shigoranga. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonon, Chapter 75, Duryodhan, Humiliated, Text 39 and 40, right? 40 also. Sabridito badam no rusha jwalam Niskramya tushnim prajajao gaja vayam ha heti shabda sumahan abhupshatam ajata shatrur bimana iba bhavat babhuvatushnim bhagavan bhubho bharam Hamujjihishur brahmatisa brahmatishma jadrisha sabridito bhat padano rusha jwalam nishkramya tushnim prajajao gajabajam ha heti shabda sumahan abhupsatam ajata shatrur bimana ibhabavat babu batushnim bhagavan bhubhobaram samujjihirsu brahmatismat jatrisha sabridito bat padano rusha jwalam niskramya tushnim prajajau gajavajam haheti shabda sumahan abhupshatam ajata shatrur bimana ibhababat bhabhubatushni bhagavan bhubo bharam samujjihirsur brahmatisma jatrisha. Please chant. Sabridito bhagano rusha jalan niskramya tushnim prajajau gajam haheti shabda sumaham abhupshatam ajata shatrur bimana iva bhabhat bhabhubatushnim bhagavan bhubo bharam samujjihirsur brahmatisma jatrisha sadbridito vadano rusha jwalam niskamya tushnim prajajau gajavajam haheti shabda shumahan abhutsatam ajata shatrur bimana iva bhavat babhuvatushnim bhagavan bhuvo bharam samujjihirsur brahmatisma jatrisha sadbridito vadano rusha jwalam niskramya tushnim prajajau gajavajam aheti shabda sumaham abhupshatam ajata shatrur binama iva bhavat babhuvatushnim bhagavan bhubo bharam samujjihirsur brahmatisma jatrisha saha He, Duryodhana, sorry, he, Duryodhana, Mriditaha, embarrassed, Avak, held down, Badanaha, whose face, Drusha, with anger, Jwalam, burning, Niskramya, exiting, Tushning, silently, Prajayao, he went off, Gaja Abajam, to, Has, to Hastinapura, Ha ha iti, alas, alas, Shabdaha, the sound, Sumaham, very great, Abhut, arose, Satam, from saintly persons, Ajatachatruhu, King Yudhishthira, Bimanaha, depressed, Iva, somewhat, Abhavat, became, Babhuba, was, Tushning, silent, Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, Bhubaha, of the earth, Bharam, the burden, Samuchjihirsu, wanting to remove, Brahmati Asma, Duryodhan, became deluded, yet whose, Drisha, by the glance, translation and purport that by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Humiliating and burning with anger, Duryodhan turned his face down, left without uttering a word, and went back to Hastinapura. The saintly persons present loudly cried out, "Alas, alas!" And King Yudhishthira was somewhat saddened. But the Supreme Lord, whose mere glance had bewildered Duryodhan, remained silent, for his intention was to remove the burden of the earth. Purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, quote, when Duryodhan left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted the incident, and King Yudhishthira also became very sorry. But despite all occurrences, Krishna was silent. He did not say anything against or in favor of the incident. It appeared that Duryodhana has been put into illusion by the supreme will of Lord Krishna. And this was the beginning of the enmity between the two sects of the Kuru dynasty. This appeared to be part of Krishna's plan in his mission to decrease the burden of the world. Text number 40. Etati bihitam rajam yat pristo ham iha tvaya sujodanasya dauratmyam raja sujye mahakratau. Translation. I have now replied to your question, O king, concerning why Duryodhan was dissatisfied on the occasion of the great Rajasuya sacrifice. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swamin Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Shatarine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Srila Sanatana Goswami comments on these two verses. In text number 39, he writes, Duryodhana left the assembly in silence because he was ashamed. Because of his shame, he hung his head. He was also angry. He returned to Hastinapura with pomp, with Yudhishthira's servants, or quickly, being consoled, how you pronounce that? Console, yeah, console by his brothers. In other words, the brothers were calm down, trying to calm him down. People cried out because they worry about some mischief, since Duryodhana was most evil. Yudhishthira, being without an enemy, was somewhat saddened because of his natural compassion. The Lord, who appeared to show unlimited powers to spread bhakti by destroying the demons and protecting the righteous, directly the Supreme Bhagavan was silent because his desire was fulfilled. Quote, removing the burden of the earth. Or the Lord omniscient Bhagavan, knowing the seed of suffering for the Pandavas, remained silent because he desired to remove the burden of the earth. Or the Lord possessing all powers, Bhagavan, able to bewilder Duryodhana by his glance, remains silent. The maker of the whole Maya did not have the power of such bewilderment on his own. And in text number 40, Srila Sanatana Goswami also comments, I have replied to your question about why Duryodhana was unhappy in the assembly or on the bank of the Ganga at the sacrifice. It has been explained by me. There is no doubt about it. Do not think there was any other cause of his dissatisfaction. His dissatisfaction arose just from the sacrifice. The disrespect was not from anything else. This was because he thought he was a good fighter. O king, endowed with all qualities. You can understand this. So this last verse was Srila Sukadev Goswami now speaking with Maharaj Parikshit. So the conclusion of all this, yesterday it was discussed that this was a very important um, happening that has a huge implication in how things are going to turn. So it was a pivotal moment that is going to spark the basically the happening of a war in which 600 million people die. 600 million. It's a huge amount of warriors, kings. And if we remember in the beginning of the past tense of Krishna, when the demigods where Mother Earth actually came to Lord Brahma asking for help because she was overburdened by so many demoniac kings. So many demoniac kings. So Lord Krishna, he made plans to appear and reestablish the principles of religion, to alleviate the burden of Mother Earth, to eliminate all the miscreants, all the kings, demoniac kings. Now, this is coming to a great, great conclusion, the end of these pastimes. Krishna has already eliminated so many demons from the very beginning as a baby in Vrindavan to as a great warrior king in Dwarka, in Mathura and Dwarka. And so many great demons has been already taken care. But now you have what is left, which was a lot. I mean, it was Duryodhan at the top of influence with his demoniac propensities. And there's so many kings that were actually also of demoniac propensity that have to be eliminated. But not only that, not only demoniac kings were to be eliminated, but actually anyone in the responsibility of leading the war that was somewhere implicated with the mismanagement in terms of religious principles of the whole world. So not only demoniac kings, but also very pious kings. In fact, of all the millions of kings that fought in that war, in both sides, both the Pandava sides and the Kuru sides, the only survivors were the Pandavas. So imagine that. So even from the Pandava side, the side that fought to establish the principles of religion, most of, the majority just died, were killed. So there was certain level of implication when things with when there was so much flourishment of demoniac qualities. And therefore, it's almost like you have to rebuild things. Krishna has to basically put something, bring it, restart it again with all the right pieces from the very beginning. So Maharaj Yudhishthira was established as the king eventually to fulfill Krishna's purpose of the establishment of perfect management in terms of religious principles of the world. Krishna explains that in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, what is his purpose for coming to this world? That when there is a dharma glani, when there is a breakage in the principles of religion in the world, he appears. He appears to reestablish the principles of religion and to protect the devotees and to annihilate the demons. So, in establishing that purpose, then he performed these wonderful leelas. And Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that there's these two types of people. There's those who are devotees or pious, the suras, and the asuras, demoniac. So you have divine and demoniac. Now the divine, they serve Krishna's purpose. They're very much aligned with Krishna's purpose. So although we have the situation in which a great word is to be happening, in which even great personalities, even in the level of being the topmost authorities in the universe, in the understanding and application of the principles of religion, the Mahajan, a Mahajan, even that personality have to be eliminated in this great world. And that was Grandfather Bhishma. Grandfather Bhishma have to fight on the side of the Kauravas, the side of the demoniac side. And he had to fulfill a purpose to facilitate the Lord's purposes. The ultimate purpose of basically reestablishing the principles of religion. So there's a lot of implications that happen. And more or less is something that you can see that this last arrangement in which Krishna basically, by his influence, by his bewildering influence, his Maya influence, almost have Duryodhan cover to become humiliated by his acts, make those mistakes, and basically be in that very humiliating position that simply is almost like yesterday we were discussing that fire up his envy and his anger. And that moment was the decisive moment for him to actually make all plans in which there was not going to be compromise. At that time, his decision was he had to basically eliminate the Pandavas for good and take the position of the Pandavas. And for that, they have to fully eliminate him. And once he was able to find a plan for that, we know how that developed. As he went back to Hastinapura, in the company of his associates, especially with his uncle, what was his name? Shakuni, his uncle Shakuni, he devised a plan how to steal the kingdom from Yudhishthira. And, and once he was able to achieve that, he convinced the king, Dhritarashtra, he was not going to compromise. He decided not even a piece of land that can fit into the pin of a needle he will give to Yudhishthira. So envy, the enviousness of Duryodhan was, and is explained in this chapter, it was described. Envy was the cause of Duryodhan, you know, because of his demoniac mentality and his envy. That was the cause of all these things. And Maharaj Sukadev Goswami was explaining that to Maharaj Parikshit. Don't think that was something else that caused this situation in which he was humiliated. It was his envy himself. It was already there because of his envious propensity. And the fact is that um, the description of when he saw the amazing opulence and influence of Maharaj Yudhisthira, so then he was very unhappy due to envy. And what is envy does? But envy, what it does is that uh, we see, or someone who is envious will see that the achievements of someone else and then feel like with a competitive nature, envy have this quality that you want to compete and you want to be better than someone else. So, so then I want that position. And for that, you have to eliminate that person. Remember, I don't know, the children game of the king of the mountain. So in order to get to the top of the mountain, you have to push. It's a bit of a toggle war. So you have to push the one who is in the top, and then you're in the top, and then the other ones try to get you down from the top. So there's is this competition. So that's what envy does. The the word for envy is nirmatsara. Nirmatsara. And the fact is that in the scriptures, especially the Bhagavatam, explains that Krishna cannot be understood if you have this quality of nirmatsara. Is the one that has been singled out as the quality that have to be you have to eliminate in order to achieve what the Bhagavatam is giving you. This is right in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. The second verse of the Bhagavatam tells that what is going to be presented in the Bhagavatam is this pure devotional service. It's a pure form of dharma, of religion. It's a top form, it's a supreme manifestation of religion, the param dharma. And any type of religion that is mixed with other things like karma and jnana, those things are eliminated. If there's any trace of motivation in your religious practices, that's the Vedas. That's the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda part of the Vedas. That is the majority. But the Bhagavatam have nothing to do with that. The Bhagavatam is only going to be given this supreme form of religion, which is Prema Bhakti. So that's all about the Bhagavatam. And then it says that this Bhagavatam is only going to be accessible to those who are, the term that is used is Nirmatsaranam Satam. Nirmatsaranam Satam. For those saintly persons who are free of envy. Only accessible. Now the question is, as long as we are afflicted by the false ego, there's going to be this sense of the qualities of envy will be there in different degrees. False ego is one of is the subtle, is the most subtle form of conditioning that is there in the living entity when you fall in material life, in the material world. The first things that develop is a sense of misidentification of the self, and from there everything goes down. So from false ego, then it comes all these different qualities that binds you to the material world. That is loss, envy, anger, delusion. I can't remember the other two immediately, but they all these qualities they connected to the false ego misidentification. And as long as we are afflicted by that, then we have to deal with all these things. And then you find at times, you know, we as devotees become aware of these particular qualities popping out. And as long as those are there, Prema Bhakti cannot manifest. And we cannot fully understand Krishna. However, when we are in a path of pure devotional service, when we are cultivating that, and that's part of the Bhagavatam process, it's called Bhagavad Dharma. If we follow Bhagavad Dharma, we become purified of these things. We become purified of all these different qualities. And specifically, this quality of envy becomes eliminated. Loss and envy. Those are probably the most often mentioned obstacle. You know, the other two were attachments, and yes, attachment was another one of the six. So with envy, you cannot understand Krishna, and you get into the competition with others. And that, and when you have this demoniac mentality, then you are not necessarily in the process of trying to purify yourself from that, but you're actually embracing that type of quality and going down, going down. So the situation of, in this situation, Krishna is exposing the you know, it's becoming very clear now that you know who are the two parties are becoming very clear. You know, Srila Prabhupada explains, and I think Srila Sanatana Goswami explained, that now the two parties are very clear, the two sects are very clear, and the enmity, you know, now it become very much exposed. Because before, all the politics were covering this thing. You know, Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra were scheming so many ways to hurt and eliminate the Pandavas. But everything was covered by politics. So nothing was perfectly, you couldn't, you know, there was no smoking gun. But in this situation, those who were demonic, they became very clear because Now, with the establishing of Maharaj Yudhisthira and the fact, the term that is used for Maharaj Yudhisthira is Ajata Shastru, which is he had no enemies. So if someone was envious, to be envious of Maharaj Yudhisthira, you really have to be to 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 show this unhappiness and this envy, then and dissatisfaction. You really have to now announce, I'm he. I see his as my enemy, as my competitor. So everything now is exposed, and this is the beginning of forming the two sides of the war, and it's becoming very clear. Now, I wanted to just touch base on something you're thinking, you know, um, the implications that it have on Krishna causing, because in the class Krishna Archana gave yesterday was touch that, why, in one sense, Maharaj Yudhisthira is perfectly acting on religious etiquette and principles. And he knew, and it says here, the saintly person was, alas, alas, loudly, because now you really creating the circumstances that are going to be disastrous, because this man is very demoniac. So if you provoke him, then there's going to be consequences of that. So therefore, this provocation, this thing, what happens, being laughed out, then that was going to cause something really, really bad. So Maharaj Yudhisthira knew that, the saintly persons knew that, and if they were acted, in accordance to the etiquette of having a guest, and not make sure that the person is not feel insulted, then he doesn't have any type of excuse to live in that way. But this whole thing gave him an excuse. He has been insulted. Now he have excuse. He have something to hold to, and the fact that Krishna arranged for that, encouraged that. Yesterday we brought the question. So why Krishna will do something like that? And it's a question that you can bring in so many ways, because throughout the pastimes of devotees of Krishna, you see in so many ways how many difficulties they have to go through. And even in cases in that, like for common devotees like most of us, we have to go through so many things, or being part of communities of devotees that are struggling. Why is Krishna allowing that? We see other places, flourishing. Why do we have to struggle when, our communities is filled with sincere devotees who are trying their best, or trying within their limitations to serve Krishna sincerely. Most of the devotees are very sincere. So why Krishna have to place the devotees through all these difficulties? And especially, okay, you know, we are not, we have flaws. We're not pure, most of us, but the Pandavas, I mean, they were perfected devotees. Arjuna, Yudhishthira, perfect devotees. Why do they have to go through all that? Queen Kunti, Draupadi, these are all perfect devotees. And they have to go through all these difficulties. They have to go through so many things. You know, why Krishna does or arrange his pastimes in that way? In one sense, he could, come and just eliminate all these demons, without having in a very sort of with less pain for those he wants to protect, the devotees. I mean, the Pandavas have to go through a long stretch of being in a very, very difficult situation without, with so much difficulties and obstacles. It brings that, question of why bad things happens to good people. You remember that it's a common discussion in devotional circles. It's a very important thing to understand, and it's something that other religions, when it comes to have that question, to try to find answer to those questions, their faith becomes, because of improper understanding, the faith becomes compromised. And the answer to that, the proper answer, is that Krishna does that because he wants to bring the devotees to the point of full surrender. Full surrender. That's the whole thing. That's the whole teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. That's what is going to give us access to this Prema Bhakti, the supreme form of religion, of Dharma. That we fully become protected, or we surrender fully to Krishna's protection. For the pure devotees, they show constantly and constantly through the tribulations they have to go, they show the example and the path of full surrender to Krishna. All of them, they show in us the path. For the pure devotees, their suffering and their obstacles is not the same as the obstacles that regular devotees, like most of us, have to go. We have to deal with our condition that is due to our previous actions, our karma. Because of our karma, we have this particular body that brings all kinds of limitations and obstacles already built in. And we have to purify those. So for us, Krishna arranges everything, sufferings or this and that, in order to purify us. For the pure devotee, the suffering is to glorify them. So for us, it's purify, or for most of us, it's purification. For the pure devotees, it's glorification. And the glorification is to see how, in those circumstances, they always choose to take full shelter of Krishna. We see it in the case of Draupadi, when she was disrobed, she was holding. It shows, the whole thing. And then she naturally, then with full trust in Krishna, she left her hands at both arms and just chanting O Govinda. So, so that's what Krishna does. And it's designed like that. We have to understand it's designed like that because this material world is a place of suffering. So suffering is by design. Suffering allows to understand by ordeal that we don't belong here. And Krishna uses that for the devotees to become, to come to the position of full surrender. And we become purified of all the things that becomes obstacles, including envy, including loss, including attachments, all these type of things. For the demoniac, then Krishna's mercy comes by the material world will take care. Suffering will do. For the devotees, then because we have these wonderful examples to follow, and by the process of devotional service, as we become purified, our surrender to Krishna becomes possible, and then we can fully understand Krishna. And I just end by reading, just at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that to Arjuna. It's a, very nice verse right before the when he say the Sarva Dharma verse, just surrender to me. So he's making the point, he's bringing the point to this last instruction. He say, if you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So that's the crunch. That's what Krishna is moving towards. That's what Duryodhana, who represents, this quality of envy and false ego, is a supreme representation of that. Or less, supreme, but it's a very strong representation of that. Then Krishna is making this very clear. Duryodhana, by choice, because of envy and because of being so caught in this demoniac quality, he doesn't see Krishna. He just see competition through envy. And is not able to understand. For all others who are able to embrace and celebrate the achievements of great personalities and especially devotees, then they able to have entrance to this understanding. So, but at the real thing that is being looked after is to accept and surrender to Krishna. And surrender to Krishna means to take up, to be conscious of Him and following His instructions. Have full trust and faith of His instructions. And and then one can surpass all the obstacles. Any comments or questions?
I gotta get breakfast transfer. Um, Thank you for class. Is so important. Like it's so clear the way you explain it. Like most of the time, it's very clear, very important. Um, the only thing that comes to my mind that I wanted to share is that how you know if I just say it plainly, like I would speak to someone that the whole thing jumped off in the beginning with Krishna's arrival, with him having to be born in a jail and not having all of his siblings killed, like the children before him, which are his family members, just being killed and then being born in jail. And it just starts off so, um, I want to say treacherous, but just it starts off horrible. And to me, as an individual, it just seems that Krishna is trying to let everyone know that, you know, when he talks about how karma is so hard to understand, and the first thing that came to my mind is back in the day when we ate meat, and the person would fry up some fish or something, and they'd throw the the skillet, the oil would be so hot, and you know that when you throw that fish in there, that grease is gonna splatter, and you don't know where it's gonna go. And everybody had to stand back when you put it in, else you might get burnt or something. So, personally, in my mind, this reminds me of Kali Yuga, where we don't know what's about to happen, or where one little thing done, the reactions of that karma is so unfathomable. It just seems personally to me that Krishna is just saying, you still have free will, minute free will, but you know, can you see what it is? Have you had enough? If not, you can stay in the. What did they say? The frying pan. You know, you can stay. You can do whatever you want to do, but it is what it is, and um, that's just what I see as personally. But my question, I always think, like, why wouldn't Krishna come and just be like, um, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The story we have in the West about Jesus, he came and didn't have, that whole story. It's like we see purity in an external way. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, we see purity in an external way. He gave up mangoes. He never lost a drop of essence. Um, so it's a lot easier to see a person like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. But persons like Prabhupada, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bilvala Mangala Thakur, so many people that are pure and unable to see, but examples like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati are not really spoken about a lot. And that's kind of like my question. Even with Arjuna, and his involvement with Lady Subhadra, Why wasn't he like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and like, oh, women, do not think of women. Lord Chaitanya says, do not think of women even in dreams. But it's he's married twice. You know, the Bhakti everyone's married, everyone's householders. So to me, that's where my personal kind of question is. Like, kind of, I just leave it with a big question mark.
Oh, it's a different subject matter, but if it's a matter of having a much deeper understanding, and it's, in one sense, it's part of the Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna tells Arjuna that renunciation is a necessary thing, um, to go back home, back to Godhead. You have to renounce the material um, conception of life. You have to renounce that. But renunciation doesn't mean, and this is something that the acharyas makes clear, that you renounce the materialistic concept of life, but you accept and embrace the spiritual concept. So you renounce relationships that are materially contaminated, or relationships that are part of, that are um, eh, you renounce the materialistic way of the materialistic concept of life, basically. Relationships, in one sense, you can actually make them spiritual. Activities, you can make it spiritual. Everything you can make is, you can spiritualize, and you can do it as an offering. That's the whole thing. Whatever you do, whatever you did, whatever you offer, whatever you eat, you do it as an offering to me. So we can spiritualize things. The material conception is what you actually renouncing. So Krishna says that in the Bhagavad Gita, in 6th chapter, that a sannyasi is not someone who is not uh, um, starting a fire. That you renounce now doing fire yagyas and all that. That you give up, putting a fire. But actually, a sannyas means someone who have the right conception. The conception of everything is for Krishna's pleasure, and nothing is for my, but it's for Krishna's pleasure. And that's the real thing. So when we have, when we're trying to understand these things from the materialistic conception, then it's impossible. Then you don't have an answer. And when we start to understand the spiritual conception, then we have an answer. And um, that is just is a principle. The principle of everything is for Krishna's pleasure. Now, for us, the question is, okay, so then whatever I do, I just say Hare Krishna is for you, as for you. That's a good attitude, but the thing is that you do, for the whole thing of surrendering to Krishna, the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, is that we follow Krishna's instruction. So Krishna tells us how to do, how to carry out this, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you worship, whatever sacrifices, or all that for his pleasure, how to do that. He gives instruction, he gives all the principles, we just have to follow. So, and we have them at the heart of that, to be able to follow properly Krishna's instruction, we have to become purified. So, then the different stages of the process of devotion, we take shelter of a spiritual master. That's what Krishna explains. That's and we engage in the process of devotional service under the spiritual master, and etc., etc. We study the scriptures, we learn, we cultivate transcendental knowledge, uh, and all that, and then we're okay. Then we're able to understand. So the problem again is when we're trying to see things from the perspective, from a conditioned perspective, and not from the perspective of transcendental knowledge. And there's a process to for that knowledge to become realized, to become vijnana, to become fully realized. So, any other question, Krishan?
This, you were discussing the problem of envy, and that in the case of Duryodhan, um, it's led to this kind of vow that not even a little speck of land would be given to Yudhisthira. But the problem was that King Yudhisthira already had um, I guess, a very opulent palace, and he was flourishing. And the enviousness in previous verses that was mentioned on the part of Duryodhan was even enviousness of Yudhisthira's dharma, that he was so correctly situated. So it's a very a horrendous thing, the envy that one is motivated to completely annihilate somebody else and their rightful situation. So, from that perspective, one can see that it wreaks havoc, not merely for the person at whom the envy is directed, but for everyone else too.
Yeah.
Because there's the rightful situation of Maharaj Yudhisthira naturally is reflective of a broader balance in the whole of society. So as you started out the class, that actually that particular envy was the root of the destruction of 600 million people. So I'm just, processing what you said and just thinking of the highly destructive nature of enviousness, that it's not merely, the position of one entity, but it actually destroys the whole structure.
Yeah, it's a fact. So anyone who has any position of responsibility, then is very important to have a control over these things. That's why the scriptures tell us, don't become a teacher, don't become a guru, don't become a parent if you're not able to control these lower natures. If you're not able to be, if with these lower natures you cannot secure the flourishment, the spiritual flourishment, and even material flourishment of those who are your dependents. So to be in a position in which others are your responsibility to provide that type of facility for others to flourish, and you afflicted by this lower nature, and you allowed these things to, in one sense, this either implicit or explicitly, either in a subconscious or conscious way, that you make choices and you deal with people and you deal with circumstances with this type of material flaws, then it's a disaster. You can actually affect, the functioning. It's true. You actually can break a structure, or even stifles, a structure, the developing of a structure, and then that cause overall obstacles and suffering for others. So the position of responsibility is it have quite some implications, and you have to go through also the accountability of those failures. It will happen. In the case of Duryodhan, he lost everything at one point, at the end of the battle. The tears of Dhritarashtra, he had to face the loss of everything, just because of being accommodating those demoniac tendencies, rationalizing them. The rationale of Dhritarashtra was that, you know, it was his right, and he rationalized it. He was knowledgeable. He knew. He even knew Krishna's position. And still, because he embraced that position and he rationalized it. So it is quite something. You have to be very careful. Yeah. Anyway, we should stop here. It's a little late. Thank you. Grantara Shriman Bhagavatam ki jai.